Okay, so now we'll get into The Hollow Man by Eliot again. So in terms of this poem, we can start off by, again, looking at the physical implications that Eliot draws out in terms of the modernist era. So I think in Hollow Man, he really depicts this desolate nature of the environment, which resulted in a detachment between individuals and the landscape, and it essentially details the alienation that they experienced. So what we can start off is the line where the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. So we've got the juxtaposition there, which really reveals the positivity of the sunlight, which is beating down on the soldiers or on the environment, which is broken. And I think it really depicts the nature of the environment where there's this lack of connection and this lack of ability to enjoy, or even like a lacking of enjoyment within the physical environment because it has been degenerated to that extent. So this whole idea of the lifeless environment is again furthered when he says, this is the dead land, this is the cactus land. And this can actually link back to the whole disenchantment of war because of his extensive use of desert metaphors, which really creates this post-apocalyptic setting. And I guess it really demonstrates this isolated terrain and a sense of emptiness, which I guess you could also analyze in the psychological sense, because then there's this lack of meaning, but we can get more into the psychological implications further on. We also see this fading in a sense of the individual because there is the personification where there is a tree singing and voices are in the wind singing. So this really symbolizes the desolate nature of life in this modernist period, which led to the individual's consequent detachment from their environment. And finally, another really effective quote you can use is this imagery of this abandoned, dirty, infested environment, which is really evident through rats' feet over broken glasses in our dry cellar. I think also in terms of this quote, it really symbolizes the insignificance of the individual as a result of war and the fracturing of the self in the modernist society. And it's really reflective of the destruction to the urban environment and its pervasive effects that render the individual's interaction with the physical landscape as completely insignificant. So in terms of the physical sense, what we really see is the individual's detachment from the physical environment, and we also see that I think that will be stemming from the fact that the physical environment is portrayed as very much lifeless and I guess post-apocalyptic, because it really links to the whole mindset post-World War I. So now we can get into the psychological implications within the Hollow Man. So Eliot really depicts the individual's emptiness due to their sense of detachment and alienation. So I think first off, we've got the form that he uses. So he uses an inconsistent free verse form, and that's significant because it really reflects this absence of constructive purpose within humanity. And yeah, I think a lack of form is reflective of a lack of purpose that was perceived then. So we've got one of the key quotes, which is, "We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men." So we've got an oxymoronic opening motif, and that's actually repeated throughout the poem. And I think the suggestion that they are hollow men is a metaphor for the spiritual emptiness of the modern man, because it really highlights that they've become morally hollow and empty, and they've lost a connection with their surrounding. We've also got the diction of stuffed, which could represent how the individual has been stripped of their humanity and how they are, how they're now surrounded by like meaninglessness within their new modernist world. And then we've got the use of anaphora, which really reinforces, combined with the inclusive language, which really reinforces that this is a collective mindset, and this is common to a lot of people within that modernist era. Okay, we further this idea where they're dried voices. So this is a metaphor really that suggests that they're unable to express their thoughts, and it really symbolizes that they're dehumanized because they're lacking the necessary means for human communication. And I think that ultimately really, really reinforces their detachment between each other and also the rest of the modernist world. And finally, I think another key quote that you can use is where there is shape without form, shade without colour, and gesture without motion. So we've got the repetition of without first off, which proposes that after war there is nothing left between, I guess there's a lack of meaning, and it essentially reveals this really detached state of mind and this alienation that the persona experiences between himself and the surrounding world. So Hollow Men, I think, is actually a really good poem to pick up on because there is this really distinct physical landscape that Eliot creates. So he's got that really lifeless post-World War I landscape where, you know, it's really lacking and it's really quite post-apocalyptic. And you've also got, in terms of the psychological sense, Eliot really highlighting a lack of meaning and a real sense of, as a result of that, a real sense of detachment between the individual and their surrounding world. That's 3 done. Woohoo!